factors nila. Hanggang ma-absorb ko, absorbing ko yan. Pag di ko na kaya, magtataas ako. So, hindi pa kaagad yung impact.
House Ways and Means Committee Chairman Joey Salceda said in a statement that if oil goes below $120 per barrel, next week's round of price increases may settle at 8 pesos 70 centavos for gasoline, 7 pesos 25 centavos for diesel, and almost 7 pesos for kerosene. Still a hefty price. World oil price at one point jumped to nearly $140 per barrel. The government says the worst has yet to come from the global economic shock. Chrissy De Matulak, CNN Philippines.
PUV drivers in the provinces also say rising fuel prices are taking a toll on their daily income. Take a listen.
Ang kita namin ngayon, halos lahat sa gasolina na lang napupunta. Dati, nasa 600 to 700 lang ang kita namin. Ngayon, nasa 300 na lang dahil sa taas ng increase.
Minsan, 400 na lang ang naiuwi namin dahil sa hirap ng sitwasyon. Ngayon, lalo na't pandemic. Paano mo mapagkakasya ang 400 kung may pamilya ka na? Sana kahit kaunti taasan nila ang presyo ng pamasahe para hindi lang ang mga driver ang mag-suffer sa krisis sa gasolina.
While drivers are asking for a fare increase, some groups are seeking a new daily minimum wage of 750 pesos. Our senior correspondent Lois Calderon spoke to a member of the National Wage Board and to labor organizations. She joins us live. Lois, is there already an actual filing?
The first wage hike petition for this year comes not from the usual sector or labor groups we have seen year after year. This time it's from the Metal Workers Association of the Philippines that calls for a new wage floor of 750 pesos per day. That's a drastic 350 peso increase from the current daily take-home pay of 317 to 400 pesos in Calabarzon area, where the metal workers filed their plea. The Influential Employers Confederation of the Philippines, or ECOP, confirms to us that they have a copy of that petition. And since ECOP sits in the Regional Wage Board, it will study the petition, although no date has been set yet for the discussion. The last wage hike granted was back in February 2020, just before the community quarantine or the lockdown, and that's in Region 2. Prices have soared given the supply bottlenecks, and labor groups like Union ng mga manggagawa sa agrikultura and party list Anak Pawis are telling us that their families hardly survive with 537 pesos minimum wage for Metro Manila. These labor groups want wages to rise to 750 pesos per day, or at the very least, a 100 peso increase across the board.
A real wage na value ngayon ng 537 ay actually 437 na lang siya, yung real value niya. So, yung nawalang 100 piso sa panahon pa yun ng pandemya, how much more na matindi yung pagtaas ng presyo ng langis, presyo ng mga pangunahing bilihin.
Pia, the metal workers please, the first in a string of wage petitions we're expecting this month. There will be more. Pia?
Lois, there's a one-year ban on filing a new wage hike petition. The Regional Tripartite Wage Board turning down the petition of the Union ng mga manggagawa sa agrikultura and Anak Pawis for a 100 peso wage hike. Can they file again?
That's right, Pia. Anak Pawis National President Ariel Casilao says the prescription period lapsed last February, and so they can file within this month. But remember, the Wage Board last year dismissed their petition on technicality. It said the across-the-board minimum wage increase does not fall within the jurisdiction of the NCR Tripartite Wage Board. We talked to Sergio Ortiz Luis, the president of the Employers Confederation of the Philippines. He sits on the Tripartite Wage Board representing the private sector.
This micro, who employs the most of them, is not capable of salary increases. I'm not saying we are not to increases. I'm just warning people not to create expectation. Medyo malabo yung magbigay ng increase sa minimum wage this time around.
Meantime, Labor Secretary Silvestre Bello has ordered the boards to speed up its review on the minimum wages. Bello admits that the current daily minimum wage in NCR is no longer able to cope with skyrocketing prices of basic commodities. The boards are expected to submit their recommendations before end of April. Back to you.
Lois Calderon there reporting. Airlines are offering promo fares now that demand for travel is gradually increasing, but with a rise in fuel prices, will there be an increase in airfares soon? Our correspondent Stanley Gahete has more.
Summer is almost here, and as COVID-19 restrictions are relaxed, airline companies see demand in booking flights increase after almost 2 years of travel ban. To recover losses fast, airline companies are offering various promo fares.
I would say na sustained yung confidence ng mga kababayan natin na bumiyahe because it is reflected in our sales. Reflected siya dun sa increase nung flight bookings namin.
However, the aviation industry is facing another challenge. While the economy is recovering, the Russia-Ukraine conflict is affecting the world market.
Well, definitely, no, it's a cause for concern yung nangyayari ngayon sa Russia because isa siya sa pangunahing pinagmumula natin or pinagkukunan ng fuel or ng supply ng produktong petrolyo, no.
Fuel hedging is an important strategy for airline companies to buy jet fuel while price is still affordable. However, it's still a risk for the aviation industry when prices drop later. Due to this instability, airline firms are asking the government to reduce or at least not increase government-imposed fees and charges. Meanwhile, under the current situation, airlines are allowed to increase fuel surcharge to be able to recover losses from continuous price hikes.
Nasa sa kanila yan kung gusto nilang i-fully, kasi yung binibigay namin ceiling yun. Diba? Sabi ng isang airline, kahit malugi ako, basta ma-stimulate ko yung market. Hindi ko i-implement fully. Kalahati lang yung surcharge ko. Nasa kanya yun.
Each of the airlines have their own strategy of how much to charge. No? Siyempre, there will be restraint in increasing the fares so that it does not add to the overall cost of travel. If there are more travelers, then there are more opportunities to bring down the fare.
Stanley Gahete, CNN Philippines.
A glimmer of hope for Ukrainians 2 weeks since the Russian invasion. Officials say Ukraine has, quote, enjoyed considerable success against Russian aircraft, preventing Russia from taking control of its airspace. Ukrainian forces have also agreed to a 12-hour ceasefire beginning this afternoon to allow more civilians to escape. The routes will be in 5 more cities, including Mariupol, which has been surrounded by Russian troops. The evacuation corridor in the city of Sumy will also remain open until Thursday, Philippine time. About 5,000 Ukrainians have fled to safety since Tuesday. Well, hundreds of Filipinos in Ukraine have also sought refuge in neighboring countries. While the government is scrambling to save more of them, an expert raises the alarm over another possible impact of Russian attacks on the country. Tristan Odalo tells us more about this and why the Philippines should keep its stance on the conflict.
Time is of the essence in evacuating Filipinos from Ukraine as the Russian invasion rages on. Government officials say that the situation there remains fluid and the conditions in crisis zones get harsher. They also appeal to Filipinos to reconsider their decisions and get out of Ukraine while there's still a chance. The Foreign Affairs Department says close to 200 Filipinos are now out of harm's way. 63 of them have been repatriated to the Philippines. Some are now in Poland, Moldova, Hungary, Austria, and Romania. They're currently in Kiev and Lviv while seafarers are stranded in the Black Sea.
May mga kababayan tayong ayaw umuwi sa Pilipinas kasi nandun daw po yung mga trabaho nila. And some of them, yung mga employers nila are continually giving salaries. We'd like to tell them na over 2 million na po yung refugees na tumawid. No? Ibig gusto po sabihin nun, lumalala na yung sitwasyon, that they should exercise their sound judgment.
But apart from what was described as the fastest-growing refugee crisis in Europe since World War II, foreign policy experts say the Philippines should watch out for possible spillover effects of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Some experts also warn that other big countries could use Russia's incursion into Ukraine as a justification of their future actions toward less powerful nations.
The new government to accept the reality that Russia's war against Ukraine will not stay in Ukraine and Europe but will spread elsewhere. And the new leadership, which must have the vision, which must have the moral courage and conviction, must prepare the Philippine nation for this coming strategic contagion What happened in Ukraine is just the beginning.
The best foreign policy for the Philippines in this specific case is one that will ensure the following. First, China will not use the Russian invasion of Ukraine as a precedent to encroach on Philippine island territories and maritime zones in the West Philippine Sea.
So what can the Philippines do amid this full-blown conflict? Foreign policy experts say that the country must maintain its position against the attack. The government must also open its borders for refugees from Ukraine and Russia, and that we should extend assistance to Ukraine or other European member states amid this humanitarian crisis. Tristan Nodalo, CNN Philippines.
Up next, no more vacant seats in the 7-member Comlec and Bank, with 3 officials assuming their posts, while health experts are studying the need for second booster shots for select groups. Details when we come back.
Bilib ako sa MX3 dahil ito ay napatunayang may alpha, beta,
RPN DXKP Pagadian, ang inyong Radyo Ronda. RPN Radio Philippines Network. Radio Philippines Network. Live to the world, pinaagi sa FB page. Karon, mag-download na. Pinaagi sa Google Play o Apple Store, YouTube o Twitter. Alang sa mas kipakuskan ng mga balita, komentaryo, kasayuran o kalingawan. Ang mas kipakuskan ng inyong Radyo Ronda. Member, kapisanan ng mga broadcaster ng Pilipinas.
Welcome back to Newsnight. The Commission on Elections gets a full bench once more after a month-long wait. New chairman Saidamen Pangarungan, as well as commissioners George Garcia and Amy Neri, have officially assumed their posts as part of the 7-member en banc. Our Melissa Lopez is reporting live from the Comlec headquarters in Manila. Mel, how did their first day go?
Pia, Chairman Saidamen Pangarungan officially leads the COMELEC beginning today after he was appointed by President Duterte on Tuesday. Pangarungan, a lawyer, former Lanao del Sur governor, and chairman of the National Commission on Muslim Filipinos, officially assumed the post after a turnover ceremony this afternoon with acting chairman and most senior commissioner Socorro Inting. He and new commissioner Amy Neri commit to safe and fair elections on May 9.
We aim to strengthen this commission so that we can perform our most important mandate, and that is to preserve the sanctity of the vote and the independence of this commission. I stand before you today as a defender of democracy, who will be independent and conscientious in giving life to the fundamental freedom of suffrage.
I can assure the Filipino people that they can repose their trust and confidence to the Commission, most especially this 2022 election.
Pangarungan's priorities include the maximizing employee benefits and securing international certification of the COMELEC's services. He cites his track record of removing thousands of ghost barangays when he was with the Interior Department. Pangarungan, Neri, and another new commissioner, George Garcia, attended today's en banc session. It's the first time in over a month that the 7-member body was complete. Neri and the 4 current commissioners attended in person, while Garcia and Pangarungan joined through video conference. Among the first issues tackled by the Commission is the Supreme Court order temporarily stopping the removal of campaign posters within private property under the controversial Oplan Baklas.
We will continue with our Baklas operations in public spaces as it is required by law. However, as far as Baklas in private places, that is held in abeyance, in deference to the court.
The new appointees need to hit the ground running with exactly 2 months to go before the May 9 polls. But their 7-year terms are not yet sure as they still need to hurdle the Commission on Appointments. Their fate is in the hands of Congress, which is on a break until late May to give way to the election season. Back to you, Pia.
Mel, what happens now to the deal between COMELEC and Rappler? The Supreme Court's TRO, temporary restraining order released today. What are the poll body's next steps?
Yeah, that COMELEC spokesman James Jimenez has said that they will defend the agreement, but the COMELEC has deemed it prudent to hold off or suspend the fact-checking activities and voter education collaboration with Rappler, given the case filed by Solicitor General Jose Calida. However, Jimenez clarifies that the deal has not been cancelled. Pia.
Elisa Lopez there reporting from COMELEC's headquarters in Manila. A look at what presidential candidates are up to 61 days before the Filipino votes. Vice President Leni Robredo welcomes the Supreme Court decision to temporarily stop COMELEC's Oplan Baklas, or the takedown of campaign materials even within private property. Robredo says her supporters feel targeted by the controversial campaign.
Sana hindi totoo na targeted tayo, although marami tayo mga volunteers na ganun yung paniniwala. Dahil sa nakikita nila on the ground na ang reports ng iba, yung campaign paraphernalia lang nila, yung tinatanggal. Yung sense of fairness, yun yung nagpapadagdag sa confidence ng tao na yung election will be based on, di ba, yung free exercise ng ating choices.
Senator Ping Lacson and his running mate Tito Soto pay a courtesy call on Pasig City Mayor Vico Soto. This marks the first time Mayor Soto appeared with a presidential candidate, as he has always insisted on staying out of national politics. Vico is the nephew of the Senate President. The mayor's father, actor-host Vic Soto, brokered the meeting. Lacson and Tito Soto, meanwhile, are questioning the sudden rise in oil prices. Soto says oil companies should not be raising prices just yet, while Lacson suggests removing the time-bound provision under the Train 2 law. The law says excise taxes on fuel shall be suspended when the price of Dubai crude oil hits $80 per barrel for 3 months.
Hindi maaalis sa kaisipan ng ating mga kababayan, na baka nagkakalokohan tayo. Bakit ganoon? Yung mga nakatambak sa kanilang mga tangke, ilang linggo na yun doon Baka buwan pa nga Bakit biglang may usapan na pagtaas ng presyo? Lahat ng mga nabili nila dati sa ganung presyo, itataas ang presyo, idadamay kagad dito. Parang wala sa lugar.
Sa akin, kung magkakaroon special session, gusto namin revisit na lang yung sa Train 2. Huwag na lagyan ng time frame. I-open-ended na lang yung wala na yung mag-expire ng December 2020 or 2022. Kasi hindi natin unpredictable na talaga ang presyo na langis.
Willie Ong, the running mate of Manila Mayor Isko Moreno, urges the government to prepare for a possible radiation emergency. As the war in Ukraine intensifies, Ong points out other countries have prepared fallout shelters and basements, as well as radiation emergency kits, while millions of Filipinos could die of radiation poisoning because of the lack of preparation. Faisal Mangundato and his running mate Carlos Serapio calling for peace and continuing dialogue between Ukraine and Russia. The tandem says the international community should create conditions for mutual understanding.
We condemn every act of violence that causes human suffering and considers war as a scourge of humanity. No one wins from suffering and from fighting. Unless it stops, the entire world will agonize.
Bongbong Marcos vows to fix the country's high power rates without elaborating as the Ukraine-Russia war intensifies. Marcos also vowed to continue President Duterte's Build, Build, Build program in Abra, where he campaigned today.
Palalawakin pa natin dito sa lalawigan ng Abra, marami pong nakaplano na pwedeng ilagay na infrastructure ng mga tulay, ng mga kalsada upang mabuksan na ang ating probinsya, masimulaan na ang pag-unlad at pagpasigla ng ating ekonomiya.
Marcos's security personnel did not allow journalists to ask more questions as they escorted him to his float to make their way to his campaign rally in Abra. The former senator also campaigned in Kalinga province today. As economic activities go into full swing, health experts are discussing the possibility of a second booster dose. And as Caroline Bonkin reports, that will start among the most vulnerable and frontline health workers.
Senior citizen Romulo Cantilafo got his COVID-19 vaccine booster shot in San Fernando City, Pampanga on Wednesday. He's been eligible for booster since January but opted to wait for health workers to call him first.
Hindi naman ako talaga magpakakuan kung hindi nila ako tinawagan. Kasi hindi ko alam yung gagawin ko.
Soon, Romulo might be eligible again for another booster shot. All experts group and the DOH Technical Advisory Group are now looking at the dosing requirements for a second booster.
They're still looking at the benefits outweighing the risk. Sino pa ang bibigyan at ano ang dose? Maybe in a couple of weeks, we'll have the final consensus among our experts.
Siguro within next week, lalabas na yun. Pag lumabas yung guideline, immediate na yun. We will implement it right away.
Health spokesperson Maria Rosario Vergeres says vaccine experts endorsed the second booster for the elderly and moderately to severely immunocompromised individuals. Vaccine experts panel member Dr. Ron Jean Solantes says studies show their protection from COVID-19 wanes from the 3rd to 4th month after a first booster, increasing their risk of becoming severely ill. This is why vaccine experts suggested a 4-month interval between the two booster shots. Also recommended to take a second booster are those often exposed to likely infected people, including health workers and airport personnel. But Dr. Solante clarifies this is only optional and not yet recommended for fully boosted young and healthy adults.
That's on a premise that we have a surplus of vaccines. Otherwise, kung kulang ang bakuna natin, then we still need to so the objective is still giving the primary vaccine series to unvaccinated and then giving the first booster to this vulnerable population who haven't had their booster.
Booster for children and teenagers are also not yet on the table. Others have yet to complete their doses like Alexandra Torres, who just got vaccinated after turning 12 last month.
Para po makaiwas sa COVID pag nag-face-to-face po.
She feels safer meeting her classmates again at the start of their face-to-face classes next week. Caroline Bonkin, CNN Philippines.
Still to come on Newsnight, the Athletics Track and Field Association clarifies EJ Obiena still has a chance to take part in the Southeast Asian Games with the national team. Plus, Apple introduces a wide array of gadgets. I was thinking budget, including the first budget iPhone with 5G access. Details next.
RPN DXKP Pagadian. Ang inyong Radyo Ronda. RPN. RPN. Radio Philippines Network. Radio Philippines Network. Live to the world. Pinaagi sa FB page. Karon, mag-download na. Pinaagi sa Google Play o Apple Store, YouTube o Twitter. Alang sa mas kipakuskan ng mga balita, komentaryo, kasayuran o kalingawan. Ang mas kipakuskan ng inyong Radyo Ronda. Member, kapisanan ng mga broadcaster ng Pilipinas.
Pole vault sensation EJ Obiena competing under the national team in the SEA Games is still a possibility for the Vietnam event and other international tournaments. Patafa says Obiena's status is pending until the mediation process by the Philippine Sports Commission is completed. The talks hope to resolve the financial feud between the athlete and Patafa. Philippine Olympic Committee President Bambol Tolentino told CNN Philippines even if Patafa fails to endorse Obiena, the committee will still look for ways for Obiena to see action at the regional meet, but it would have to get the approval of the World Athletics body. And for those looking to make a gadget upgrade, Apple unveiling new products yesterday at its first launch event of the year. Highlights include a budget iPhone SE, an updated iPad Air, and a more powerful Mac chip. The new iPhone SE notably has access to 5G, a first for its lower-cost phone models. It'll be sold in the U.S. for $429 or around 22,000 pesos. The new iPad also featuring 5G connectivity and a revamped camera. No news yet on when these products will arrive here in the Philippines, but they will go on sale in the U.S. Sunday. And that is it for now. Join me again on News.ph at 7 p.m. I'm Pia Ontiveros for Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines.
Do you find yourself holding on to things because of memories associated with them? Things we own remind us of special moments or people, but eventually stuff piles up, leaving us with a cluttered environment that can cause stress as well as frustration. In this episode, we'll teach you how to declutter your way to a happier, healthier life. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and we bring you the knowledge and care you need, especially in this time of COVID-19. You're watching MedTalk Health Talk only on CNN Philippines. Clutter can make it difficult to get things done and find what you need. Imagine looking for your car keys when you're already late for work. This makes us very frantic, anxious, and stressed, possibly setting a negative tone for the rest of the day. Now, our guest today will talk about this topic, plus much, much more. Let's welcome to the show Alodia Mercado, who is a clinical psychologist from AMAX Psychological Services and research expert for the Department of Health. Also with us is Isa Reyes. She's a professional organizer and managing director of Meet Obsessions. Now, your home, everyone's home, should be your sanctuary. It should be a place for you to unwind as well as relax. But when it's full of clutter, full of stuff, it may become the opposite. Cluttered environments can affect your overall well-being. I'd like to start off the conversation with Ms. Day. Aside from less stress, less anxiety, ano yung mga benefits of a home that has less clutter?
Whenever there is clutter, it somehow makes you feel stagnant kasi. But when you let go of the things that you do not need anymore and start piling up and organizing things that you need, it makes you feel better because once you see things in order, it optimizes your environment. Thus, your mood and your mind. Mas nagiging kalmado yung ating pakiramdam and the state of mind whenever we have a good environment.
Having a cleaner space boosts the mind, enhances focus, mas maganda yung productivity. So, mas maganda siguro, mas maganda, mas creative ang tao kapag decluttered. But, Ms. Day, ano kayang problema? Bakit mas madalas hindi nagiging organized ang tao kung all of these benefits are there?
Well, actually, it's a natural thing to happen for human beings to have clutter in their environment. Kasi psychologically speaking, we are very sentimental in nature. Most especially as Filipinos, we wanted to collect things. We wanted to make sensible of the things we encountered in the past. Ganun naka-structure yung brain natin kasi bigger part of our brain is responsible for our emotions na nakabind sa mga objects that we have in our environment. Kaya it's really natural for everyone to have their own clutter in their environment.
In this time of COVID-19, we want to make sure that we're at our healthiest. All of us want to be healthy, of course. Not only should we exercise, fuel our bodies, we should also make sure that our space, that space that we are in, is neat and tidy. Now, Ms. Day, pag-usapan naman natin, aside from the psychological health, physical health? Meron bang physical health advantage ang isang lugar na less clutter?
Actually, a lot of researchers had already proven that. So, isa sa mga benepisyo ng pagde-declutter physically or in terms of health is for us to rid off some allergens, so yung mga things that shouldn't be in our environment. So, kapag mas mababa yung allergens natin, mas mababa yung stress level natin. And whenever we declutter, nakakatulong din yan sa pagpapababa ng stress level or cortisol level natin sa katawan. A lot of researchers showed that people tend to experience increase in stress hormones whenever they deal with their disorganized belongings. And when you often experience stress in a daily basis, it becomes chronic and it becomes different in terms of the structure of the brain. Kumbaga, nag-iiba ang structure of the brain whenever you are exposed to chronic stress. Kaya it makes you more stressed. So parang ang logic is, these clutters can make you stressed. It can change the structure of the brain, and once it changed already, it makes you more stressed on a daily basis.
When you have too many things lying around, someone might feel like that they're not in control in their life. May loss of control for that matter. Miss Isa, pag-usapan naman natin yon. Can having clutter constantly, could this lead to a lack of self-esteem ng isang tao?
I always say that if there's one thing in your life that you can fully control, those are the things that you own. Because one, they don't have any reaction, they cannot complain because those are just things. But most often than not, like if clutter pile up, diba? Parang what happens is, our things controls us. Parang ganun yung nangyayari. Like we don't want to go inside a particular room because I'm just going to be stressed out. Most often than not, it's our storage room that we don't want to go in. Diba? Na parang, I don't want to go in that. I will just feel, mag-hyperventilate lang ako sa loob niyan, right? And because instead of us being in control over that particular room or yung kalat natin, sila yung nagko-control sa atin pabalik.
On that note, being an expert in organization, ano yung mga telltale signs? Ano yung mga red flags ng isang tao that may point to na they need to declutter?
What happens is that parang yung mga tao sa paligid niya, yun kadalasan yung tumatawag sa akin, can you help my mom? Or can you help, parang my husband because nag-hoard siya. And as a professional, I understand that being a hoarder or if you are a collector, it's an accumulation of, parang it's kind of a habit na nagbi-build up. So it's kind of hard na parang dadating ako doon and then it's just going to be like one event we have to let go of your stuff. So that's why I need to come up with logical reasons why they need to declutter slowly. And one of that logical reasons was mentioned earlier, which is to protect your health and hygiene.
Now, when we return, we'll talk about how a cluttered household can be a sign of a hoarding disorder. We're your connection to healthcare. You're watching MedTalk Health Talk. Do you have trouble throwing things away? Are you becoming a hoarder? This is MedTalk Health Talk. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and we're together in health. Physical clutter can become an obsession. We may sometimes find ourselves surrounded with stuff we can't get rid of because they have some form of sentimental value or possibly can become potentially useful in the future. Not everyone who has clutter at home has a hoarding disorder. I want everyone to understand that. But let's try and find out some of the red flags for this. Miss Day, pag-usapan natin yon. A lot of people may be able to relate to this. Tinatago yung kahon ng binili nilang appliance, probably feeling nila magagamit nila yung kahon later on or, things like that. But when is it now a problem of hoarding?
The first is that we're going to consider is the impairment or dysfunction. Is the person already incapacitated to perform his or her duties at home because of excessive clutters in the environment? Since all of the things that a hoarder is really treasured, they often feel awful to let go of things regardless of its value. Kahit minsan wala nang silbi yung object, they still find satisfaction in keeping it. And I have heard a lot of members of the family of a person who is hoarding usually reads of things of a hoarder in their own absence at home. And it creates attention doon sa hoarder because all of a sudden, pag uwi nila, wala na yung mga gamit nila. And masasabi natin that it would create even more serious concerns on their mental health kasi I have seen a lot of people who commit suicide or ended their lives because of simply reading off their objects or important things at home.
Now, my question for Isa is, why do you think people hoard?
One is probably they're filling up a void, and it's also a process because it's difficult that we're going to do it at one go without them realizing and accepting in themselves that they need to let go, they need to declutter.
Some people with a hoarding disorder may also experience possibly other mental health disorders. Is this possible, Ms. Day? Could you give some examples, if so?
Is highly related to other disorders such as depression, anxiety, and ADHD, and even trauma. Based on my experience, when we're talking about the common cold, which is depression, most of them do not like to work or to stand up from their own bed. And their energy is very much limited to just survival activities such as eating and sleeping. Doon na lang umiikot yung buhay nila. And most of the time, they find it very challenging to declutter. That's why when you see a person experiencing depression, anxiety, and ADHD, you can see their environment really messy.
Hoarding, as studies have suggested, can be seen in those as early as 11 to 15 years old, and it can get worse with age. Now, hoarding is also common in older adults as well. Ms. Isa, ano yung mga risk factors that one may develop itong hoarding na ito?
I think what happens is dun sa mga nagho-hoard ng gamit, parang it's parang they're having a hard time getting off that habit of buying and collecting. And collector kasi make sure that they take care of their things. Kumbaga parang when they buy something, they know where to put it, they know where to probably hang it or keep it, store it. That's a collector. While a hoarder, on the other hand, parang when they buy or when they get things, they don't think of saan ko ba to ilalagay. It's really just the action of, acquiring and getting that item without realizing that it will again affect them, physically, mentally, emotionally.
What are the sort of steps in order to address the hoarding disorder, possible treatment, management scenarios for this?
Yes, whenever, kagaya ng sinabi ni Ms. Isa, it's very difficult to make a person who is suffering from hoarding disorder to really understand the underlying reason of doing so. But we can start with simple psychoeducation or making the person aware of the nature of what he or she is experiencing. The family dynamics is really very important in managing and treating this kind of issue because ang sabi nga, ang sakit ng kalingkingan ay sakit ng buong katawan. Kaya it's very important that there is dynamism, there is a process that has to be done within the family because by the end of the day, this is not an issue of the person who is hoarding only, but I guess all members of the family that they have to fill in a certain emotional support to that person who is suffering.
Is it common for just one person, the person who is hoarding, to be the focus of attention here? Or is it possible na merong mga enablers ito sa buhay niya?
I would say that there's a certain hormone that is being produced when you are hoarding that is very much similar to addiction. And it's so much difficult to deal with urges and cravings whenever we talk about hoarding behavior and how they are getting motivation from doing so. Kaya napaka-importante that each of members of the family would understand the triggers of this person moving towards their collecting or hoarding behaviors, which are not on the normal orders. So mahalaga na maintindihan ng tao kung ano ba yung mga sitwasyon, objects, people na mas nakakapag-push sa kanila na mag-hoard. So it's more on like understanding themselves better so that they can do better decisions in the future.
When we return, we'll help you ditch the things that are making your house unorganized. Your health is our mission. This is MedTalk Health Talk, and we'll be right back. Decluttering doesn't have to be stressful. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and you're watching Mental Health Talk on CNN Philippines, where your care comes first. Now, sometimes we may spend hours, days, or even weeks making to-do lists and buying organizational items to help manage our clutter. But what if that doesn't help? Identifying the cause of clutter is definitely a great first step. Ms. Isa, I'll start with you. What are some of the common things that can help someone start their decluttering journey?
Okay, number one that you need to do is set an intention first. What is the intention in this particular space? What do I want to feel in this particular space? Like, for example, when you're in your bedroom, what do you want to feel here? Do you want to feel at peace? Is it going to be your sanctuary, your resting place, right? You have to make sure that you know the intention in that space. Because with that intention, that's where you will start. Now, on the technical part, then as mentioned earlier, you only have to remember three things. You can actually be organized without throwing first, because I understand that decluttering is already an overwhelming task. You know, so if an overwhelming feeling plus an overwhelming task, it's not actually a good mix. But one way for you to assist yourself is that you do sorting first, build a category, sort it, put like items together, and once that you have that visual inventory, now that's where you move on to decluttering, which will make it a little bit easier.
What's your advice for the viewers on how to let go? Because I think that's an important thing, how to be able to let go, because especially for a hoarder, that is one of the things that is very difficult for them to do. So what kind of tips, what kind of advice can you give?
So it's more on awareness and being mindful of the things that have to be prioritized as of the moment. Like for example, itatabi mo ba yung mga gamit na ginagamit mo pa nung high school? Kasi no matter how important these things to you are, no, hindi naman na siya nagagamit on the present time. You have to let go of it. Same as our psychological baggages, no, we have to be aware of the benefits of decluttering emotionally and psychologically. And it's also part of the process. I do understand it is not a one-time processing that the next day you wake up, you can already let go of the things that you have been collecting or been saving for the longest time, no? Always remember that what comes in must come out.
Are there tried and true ways in order for our viewers to start their decluttering journey? There's one method called the KonMari method. Could you say something about this?
Yeah, I'm actually a KonMari consultant in training. I discussed my personal method, which I call the homeward technique. That is the process of you going home to your home. And it's the 3-step process. It's sorting, detaching, and rehoming. And I would always say in sorting, you know what you have, because that's when you put like items together. In detaching, you understand what you need. And that is the process of, you know, looking at things objectively. And in rehoming, you accept what is left. So you just have to remember 3 important steps. And I think it's very more applicable for Pinoys, especially we're highly sentimental. There's always a story to tell. Like, bigay ng lolo ko, bigay ng kapitbahay ko, nakuha ko nung unang sweldo ko. So that's why I created that technique. And you can watch my videos. I explain there how to do it, but it's easy to remember. It's easy to follow. And you don't have to be hard on yourself at the get-go where you have to let go right away, but actually, you know, understanding the commitment in taking care of your things.
This discussion was definitely very, very helpful. Thank you very much, clinical psychologist Ms. Alodia Mercado.